When you see someone who's super good at what they do, it could be cutting lawns, it could be power washing rugs, or doing landscaping, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If somebody's really good at something, it's enjoyable for us just to watch and see. You want to be able to create consistently, predictably good work. And you won't be able to unless you start to recognize your own creative formula. You can be profitable if you can find a client who values what you do more than the money that they're going to spend with you. It's pretty straightforward, and predictability, quality, and all those things are not as important as you think, because there are a lot of rich people out there buying really ugly things all the time. In fact, I would argue with most people that the vast majority of products, services, hotels, everything that you can think of, cars, are pretty ugly. Yet they're running multi-billion-dollar corporations because the average person's standard of excellence is very low. That's why people who do exceptional work stand out so much. Figure out who your audience is and figure out how they show up and how you can reach them. I think too many people make the mistake of trying to monetize too early, and I think that creates all kinds of problems.
This is Christo, a visionary in the world of design entrepreneurship. With over 2 decades of experience running a successful creative agency, Chris took his expertise to YouTube, where he now educates over 2 million subscribers on the business of creativity. Chris is not just another YouTube educator. He's built a multi-million-dollar business by teaching the essential soft skills that design schools often overlook, like negotiating, pricing, and client management. Through strategic content creation, Chris has transformed his YouTube channel into a powerful marketing engine that fuels his digital products and coaching programs, generating a substantial revenue, including making over $1 million from just one typography course alone. In this episode, we dive into how Chris turned his expertise into a profitable YouTube channel from video number 1. The strategic content that turns viewers into paying customers. Building a standout personal brand in a very crowded market. The key decisions and challenges in scaling his creator business. And Chris's formula for creating consistent, profitable content. Chris's journey is a mastermind in turning creative passion into profitable enterprise, showing us that with the right blend of creativity and strategy, anyone can monetize their expertise and build a sustainable business. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar. Chris, we have crossed paths for years, and now we get to talk about our favorite thing, money. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
What do you create on YouTube?
I create educational content, mostly the soft skills that are needed but aren't taught in design schools and design curriculum.
How did you get into that specifically, and then what led you to YouTube?
A former classmate of mine from Art Center, his name is Jose Caballé. He came to me in 2014. He said, let's make YouTube content because you're an educator and I'm an educator, but I do it online. And so I was trying to figure out how to jump the digital divide. I was teaching in traditional brick and mortar schools, and I was contemplating running workshops, but I didn't have an idea on how to build an audience, how to market things, and no idea about product creation. But Jose had all this experience, and so he kind of cajoled me into doing it. And that's how I got started in that space.
On your journey with creating your content, when did you guys get to experience income for the first time?
The intentionality of creating the YouTube channel was to sell a course that he and I were putting together called Core. It was very deliberate. We're not just going on YouTube because we want to be influencers or vlog or anything. It was really to create awareness and demand for a product we're selling. So the videos were tied to a product. So we were making money, not a lot, but we were making money almost immediately.
What was a framework that you put together to really do that? Because most people, when they're starting on YouTube, even from a service perspective, they're very much kind of fumbling through the weeds of what do I do? How do I ask for emails? One of the things I think I hear the most from here is I wish I had started asking for emails and selling from my first video. So how did you figure out that framework at the gate?
Well, I didn't figure it out. It was Jose. But I want to provide some context here because at this time, in 2014, I'm 19 years into my primary business, which is called Blind, a service business. We make commercials and music videos. We would do between $4 to $5 million a year. And so this was a side venture for me in kind of my off time. It became my preoccupation, but for right now, it didn't really move the needle at all. But Jose was like, you know what we need to do is we need to create awareness. We're going to create content around the principles that we're going to teach inside the course itself as samples of the course. And initially we created videos. We talked about the whole system and what it is that we're teaching, but we didn't have a call to action for the product just yet because we knew we needed to establish some kind of audience before we started to let them know that there's something they could buy.
So you guys created this YouTube channel to buy something. How did you build a brand from this? Again, obviously you have a little bit of a cheat code, right? Because of all of your creator business stuff, but how did you flip that script onto yourself?
I think it took a long time to figure that out. Now, I leaned into my experience directing commercials and music videos and being a student of film and TV that's what I did and that's what I taught. So when Jose and I were figuring out like, how are we supposed to show up on camera right now? I said, well, we have totally different ethos and vibes. He's Puerto Rican. I'm Vietnamese American. He's a little bit more hippie, a little bit more kind of rebel pirate. And I'm more like, let's do the business and let's get stuff done. So I said, I'll show up in my suit with tie and you show up however you want. He's like, I'll get a tunic. I'll go to Venice. I'll buy some beads and I'll just lean into the persona of these two characters. And my reference was an old TV show called The Odd Couple. Do you know The Odd Couple?
I know The Odd Couple.
So it's like, they're so different. And we are different, and we wanted to drive the differences between our perspective. So we manufactured a little bit kind of tension on set that ultimately turned into real tension. But he was like, no, man, it's about this. You got to stick it to the man. And here's how we're going to make the revolution, brother. But what is the gross profit? What's the net margins? And what are we doing? And so we would play off those roles. And that worked really well for us because there was this crazy creative human with this very free-spirited energy that wasn't going to be defined. And here I am. He would refer to me as Starnation Dad. And I'm like, okay, I guess I will be. Did you do your homework? Did you eat your vegetables? Let's go.
It reminds me a lot of those Apple PC commercials that they used to do like way back in the day, where it's like the totally different polarizing vibes, like the chill dude and the uptight like suit guy. So I know at that point it was like Apple making fun of PC, but it's still like you kind of need both sides in a creative space. Like, and I think we're really seeing this right now in the creator economy, where creators are trying to ask themselves the question, like, how do I make a creator business, not just be someone who creates cool things on the internet? Because it's not sustainable to just make cool things on the internet, because you have to have money to keep it going. How did you get to that part? Like, so you're on this crazy journey with like this someone who's like polar opposite difference from you. How did you make that work? And ultimately, what did you guys end up doing with the channel?
About 2.5 years into us doing this thing, we started to see a lot of the friction in terms of like how we wanted to run the company and our timeline for what success looked like. I think in the first year, I think we did $35,000 in course sales. And the next year we did maybe 90,000. Like every year we would double or triple our revenue. It's triple for a period of time. So it's like, still not quite enough to make this a real thing, not even to pay one's salary, but it seems like we're going somewhere. But I made the decision to separate ways from my former business partner. And that's when I really had to be accountable for all the stuff that I thought he was really good at, which was the social part, the selling and creating products and courses. So this is the first time I'm on my own now. And I realized something. I'm a business person at heart, but that's not all I am. And when I was with him to drive the differences between our two personalities, I gladly took on that role. But now it's just me, and I get to be the creative person and the business person. And I was more of myself. This is the development of me, my evolution in my personal brand. And so people would start to notice those changes. At first, there was a minion revolt, like, what happened to Jose? How could you drive him away? I'm like, Mom and Dad had a fight. We're not going to see each other for a while, but we still love each other. Everything's good. Everybody need to chill the F down. Let's do that. So as we're doing this, we're starting now to say like, well, what's our first product? Because I have no product. The only product was Core, and that's what Jose owned. So I created a typography course. And at first thought, I was like, how do we get people excited about a typography course? They don't know me from Jack. And I got some sage wisdom from my wife. It's like, honey, outside of a very small group of people, nobody even knows that you design. I'm like, okay, that's a challenge. I got to figure that out. So what we did was we would start to document a lot of design projects that we were doing that was safe to show. Sometimes self-initiated projects. Like I had my designer design a newspaper, and she would show me, and she's a machine. She would show me like 18 different layouts, mastheads, different spreads, and we would document all of it, and we would review things. And so that the language and the direction of channel was starting to change. It became really design focused so that I can then eventually talk about my typography course. I would review and critique work that people would send in. I would mark it up and we'd do it live on air. Really fun time during that period. And then I told everybody, once I knew that now we can be known for design and typography, I said I'm launching a course. The course will be totally free on YouTube for 48 hours. I'll record an episode a week, and you won't have to know what's in the course because you're literally going to see it with me right now. We saw our live audience grow to a pretty big point by the time we recorded the 4th live stream. At that point, I think we had like over 1,300 people tuning in live because momentum was being built. And then we said, okay, this is the last public recording. I'm going to record a couple more episodes. But if you want to get in on this, you can buy the course for like $79 or something like that. And we sold $100,000 worth of course sales because of that promotion. And now that course has gone on to earn over $1 million.
I think that is so fascinating. Why do you think you were able to make typography interesting and successful? Because most people have no idea what it is. Even people in
True.
design aren't even like that great at it. Like I remember when I was in art school, like we had like one whole class about it and like that was kind of it. Like
Yeah.
how did you make it something that would convert those kinds of sales?
Well, being that I'm a graphic designer, or at least classically trained graphic designer, I went through the whole program. I knew from my own experience that once you learn how to master type, you can design anything. You can design a house, you can do an interior, you could design packaging, and type was the key to all of that. And so I knew how important it was for me. So I find that this is to be true today, and you can challenge me on this, is that when you see someone who's super good at what they do, it could be cutting lawns, it could be power washing rugs, or doing landscaping, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If somebody's really good at something, it's enjoyable for us just to watch and see. But then all of a sudden, if they do something that has some useful application in your life, you might start to think, maybe I need to learn this. And the reason why I struggle is because I don't know how to do this thing. And I can show you layout after layout for posters, for editorial spreads and things where it kind of started crappy. And through a live demonstration, it would get better and better. And I was pretty good at articulating the decisions and teaching them about design rules. That's another thing that people really like. Art, music, everything, photography looks like a divine act of creation. But once you start to learn the rules, you learn that there's structure. If you follow the structure, there's a high probability that what you're going to do is going to be good. And so that's what we're teaching people. And I knew those fundamentals.
That's so fascinating. It's almost like you're saying like you can create virality or you can create art as long as you understand the basic principles.
100%. If you think about the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, more recently like Post Malone or The Weeknd, why do they have so many hit songs? Because they understand the hooks that you need to have and structure a song such that people will listen to it over and over again. The one hit wonders, they have no idea about the structure. They created something once and they're searching for the rest of their life how to get back to that point.
So would you argue that the one-hit wonders are the disruptors, but they're not the replicators?
I wouldn't even call them necessary disruptors. I would just call them the product of great chance and opportunity coming together to create something that is lightning in a bottle, and that's it. So you stumbled into something, but you yourself cannot repeat that. And this is true with people who write novels, who write one great novel and everything else is trash. This is the same as for directors who create one really good movie and then the rest of the time they're trying to get back to that glory because they haven't figured it out. And then there's people like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, who can make a great film one after the other.
Sounds like almost like a thing that we should figure out how to do as creators is figure out what's our formula for success so that we can capitalize on it as we create. How do we also tie profitability into predictability for our creation?
Profitability is a different concept than predictability. I think when you understand the frameworks and you have a recipe, and I use the word recipe very intentionally because chefs, world-renowned chefs who have decades of experience, have been trained by the masters and have put in a ton of practice, they can write a recipe literally and have you, the home cook, the amateur chef, be able to create something very similar. Maybe it's like 90% of the dish that they made, but that's a freaking pretty good score. And if we can think, to me, cooking is as mysterious as music. Like, I don't know how to cook. When somebody makes an amazing dish, I'm like, gosh, I don't know what went into this, but it feels magical. It's very artistic. But chefs know that you can literally create a recipe and give it to someone. And if they have some reasonable skill, they can make something quite good. And we don't think there's any problem with that. But if you get in a room full of creative people and you're like, there's a formula to designing a poster, there's a formula to cutting a trailer, there's a formula to creating a main title, they would brisk at you. And it's like, no, how dare you denigrate this kind of thing that I do? Because through some magic of inspiration, research, and experience, I can intuitively find my way. But the whole point is you want to be able to create consistently, predictably good work for ads, for marketing campaigns, for posters. And you won't be able to unless you start to recognize your own creative formula.
Again, my question is, how does profitability say? Do you think that if you have the right formula, you can make money selling anything?
Well, let's move on to the next part. You can be profitable if you can find a client who values what you do more than the money that they're going to spend with you. It's pretty straightforward. And predictability, quality, and all those things are not as important as you think. Because there are a lot of rich people out there buying really ugly things all the time. In fact, I would argue with most people that the vast majority of products, services, hotels, everything that you can think of, cars, are pretty ugly. Yet they're running multi-billion-dollar corporations because the average person's standard of excellence is very low. That's why people who do exceptional work stand out so much.
What formula do you have in place for yourself for creating content predictably that also you've been able to attach profitability to?
What you have to do is you have to agitate the problem first. So people don't desire the solution as much when they don't understand they have a problem. So you have to highlight the problem and you have to speak to them in the language in which they understand, language and words as if it came out of their mouth. So if I'm trying to make a product for early 20 women in the early 20s who are college educated and have a pursuit of like a writing career, how would they think and talk, and what kinds of problems and challenges do they have? If I can speak to that and highlight to them a problem, the frustration, the pain points, then they're going to start to feel like, my gosh, well, what is the solution then? And then the solution happens to be a genre of things that you can do. And then when they figure out, okay, that's the solution, then what is the product specifically? And the product is, how much does it cost? How long does it take? What form does it come in? So let's take it back to my typography course. People didn't know that not knowing typography was a problem, as you pointed out. So what I needed to do is show them the problematic layouts. Then I would show them something. They might have looked at that, like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I would tear it apart, and then I would show them the improved version. Like, oh, I didn't realize pretty good was actually pretty bad. Now I can see the difference between the two. And this person has created a roadmap for me to see it. And if I do this again and again, eventually somebody smart is going to say, I want to be able to design like that. I want to have the confidence to be able to look at a blank page and assemble words and images together in a way that it looks interesting, yet is legible and services the content so that it feels appropriate. Okay, great. Chris, what do we do? Well, you have to learn typography. That's the solution. You can go to school, you can enroll in workshops, you do a bunch of things, but I just don't happen to have a course. Would you like to enroll in the course? This is what it costs. Here's how long it takes, and these are the modules.
I love that. It's so simple to figure out, except that the question I have is, how do we as creators figure out our formula?
I don't think it's so much your formula. There are just formulas that already work. And then all you're doing is changing the variables. If you think about the movies that work in cinema, the ones that do hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, Joseph Campbell, a long time ago, identified the formula called the hero's journey. He wrote the book, A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he says, basically, there's a character and there's a call to adventure. A herald comes in, gives a call to adventure, and then there's a refusal of the call. And then at some point, a mentor appears and helps the hero cross the threshold, leaving the ordinary world and enters the new world. And they go through a series of trials and tribulations. Then they learn something. They have a relapse and then a resurrection. So they fall back, making the same mistake. And then they have this resurrection. And then they bring this newfound knowledge back to their home world, whatever that might be, literally or figuratively. And they share these gifts, these new learnings with them. And if you look at Star Wars, if you look at Mulan, you just go down the list of films that have done well at the box office. They follow the formula. It's not their formula, it's the formula, and they change the variables. And if you look at it, it's like Luke and Obi-Wan. You see, Obi-Wan's the mentor, and he helps Luke cross the threshold, literally leaving his home country into a new place. This is literally what's happening. And then he has this thing where he has to believe in the Force. And if you look at all these big films, they follow the same formula. So when I share the formula of how we launch our product, that's the formula you would use. Just change the variables.
I love it. It's so easy, and the answer is right there. But sometimes I think we get wrapped up in our own stuff around being unique, trying to stand out, when sometimes we can just fall back into some tropes that work and put our own spin and perspective on it so that it can make sense for who we're trying to connect with and who we're trying to talk to.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned making ugly stuff earlier. What has been a bad money situation that you have had to overcome through your creator journey?
Luckily, I'm a creator after I was a business owner. We don't have bad sponsorship deals because everything's in contract and we get payment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're a little tardy with their payment, but all of them have paid. Like if we get a funny feeling, we learn to listen to our gut and say like, I don't think they're honorable people. I think we need to pull out, and we do. And usually if you're so blinded by the deal, you won't see the signs. But if you're objective and neutral, you'll see the signs, and they're quite clear to recognize. We haven't been demonetized. We haven't had any weird things about losing our account, somebody hacking our thing. We just follow best principles. The setback that I can point to is last year, we made a series of small gambles that didn't pay off, that put the company in a kind of financial lurch. And we hired people who ran campaigns and did things for us that took too long to realize. By the time we saw that it wasn't working, we were in the hole. So we had to let people go. It's not something I like to do, but I just think it was a function of, do we understand the cycle that we need to be performing under. And it's not 3-6 months, because by the time you figure out it's not working, we've lost 3-6 months of the year, and we can't afford to do that.
It's a long time too in the creator space.
Yeah.
What has been your most successful financial moment in your creator business?
Once we set up the platform and the brand, having other authors and creators work with us, that their synergy with our audience and what they do, and they're creators themselves and have their own audience. We've had some terrific product launches because everyone's bought in, everyone's committed, and we're using the kind of exponential factor of our audience, your audience. It's not the sum of those two. It's kind of the two multiplied together, and it worked really well.
So one of the things that we do very differently here on our podcast is that we break down income streams based on percentages. So like what percentage of your income comes from different revenue streams. Your biggest chunk of your pie comes from your coaching program. Can you share with us how that came to be and how it works for your business?
The idea of running a coaching program or community was actually my former business partner, Jose's idea. When we sold the product, we realized people need maintenance, they have questions. And so Jose created this group. Initially, it was free and anybody could join or be a part of it. And then I'm like, that's strange. But then what's the point of buying the product if anyone can join this? And do we create safe space? And okay, we now need to lock it down. It needs to be private so no one can see what's in there and not anyone can join. And then eventually we added value to this group, not just sit around and troubleshoot, but really kind of expand on the curriculum. So we decided to charge money for it. Initially, I think it was $25 a month. That was about, I want to say 8 years ago. The same group that we run now, we charge $250 a month for.
It's not a lot. I think it's all about perspective of like what you pick, especially because like so much of our creator course membership stuff, like it'll be like $5 a month, like a Patreon or something like that. So I guess it's really a matter of perspective.
Yeah, we do have lower tier memberships that you can join for YouTube. We just launched premium memberships. So one point is $1 and another price point is $15.
I feel like it's like, I like the idea that you have something for everybody depending on like where they are in their journey so that they can be a part of what you have to offer. How do you figure out like what to charge for each one of these things and what value is given within them?
It's tough. We have a very confusing product matrix. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes we're like, what's the difference between this and that? And why am I? I'm like, nothing. Just buy the cheapest one of the two and see how it goes. If it works for you, you want to go deeper, try the next one. I'm usually trying to unsell people and say, well, if you just comb through our content, you don't have to. You don't have to buy anything. But then they insist, I must buy something. I'm like, great. Happy to have you, friend. And so I think we use a lot of guidance from friends who are there before us or our YouTube manager and ask, what do you think we should charge? What should the tiers, each of the price points? And she makes recommendations and we just kind of go with them.
I love that you have a YouTube manager. As you've built out your creator business, what are some of the tasks and roles that you have offloaded from yourself so that you can focus on creating the creative?
The easiest thing to get rid of is the editing, any kind of production stuff, thumbnail design, even the title naming structure, that they can figure it out. Then we evolve into, can you help me figure out what topics? Can you interview me and prompt me when necessary so I can talk about stuff? Can you do some of the background research all the way up into, can you research and write things in scripts and give it to me so that I can just perform them on camera? And it runs the entire spectrum. So those are all the things I can get rid of. And sometimes we can use AI to then dub over the parts that they need that I don't want to record or translate us into foreign languages.
And how much of that are you doing?
We're just in the early stages. So we have identified 6 languages that we want to make our videos available in. And we're very selective of which videos that we turn this on for, because it's all sold in credits. So it's not like we have infinite credits and infinite people to roll out everything. Of course, some people are like, can you do this one next? I'm like, okay, everybody, we've done a handful, just we'll get to it. Unless you want to pay us to do it, which no one wants, it just takes a little bit of time.
I'm just out of curiosity. Are you using the internal YouTube dubbing feature, or are you taking your YouTube channel and translating it into other languages and having like, this is the future channel in Spanish, this is the future channel in Russian, that kind of thing?
We're using third-party AI to translate my voice into different languages. And then it's manually uploaded to each one of the videos so that in your native country, it will default to your native language versus English. So people initially freaked out, like, why is this in Portuguese? Chris knows how to speak Portuguese. Clearly, I do not know how to do that, but that's how it plays out.
And is it just like the audio is different, not the mouth movements?
For now, it's just the audio. Eventually, it'll be the whole deal.
I'm always been curious about how this works because, like, globalization is a fantastic way to expand a creator business and add other revenue opportunities. Well, the United States has some of the highest AdSense rates. It's still a great opportunity to expand your reach, especially around digital products and things like that. When you have other languages at your disposal, what I'm curious about from the creator perspective is how does like the optimization of other languages work? So if like you're dubbing your channel in, let's say, just Spanish, just for easy connections, is there a thing where you can also dub like the title and the description in that language as well, or update the thumbnail in some way, shape, or form for different languages, or is it just the language that is different?
Okay, so before we had the ability to generate AI versions of your voice in different languages, we would upload captions in different languages. That was all done through volunteers. So people that love us would say, hey, I did the Mandarin version, the Spanish version, the German version of this video. And we had a small Facebook group that would just do this on the regular. And they would literally sit there and type all the words and send us with timestamp. And in that case, they also needed to include the title in Spanish so that if I think there's a way to do it so that it would show up. And I used to do that manually myself. I'm not sure how the audio version is done, but I imagine it's similar.
It's very cool. I'm just always fascinated by the process. I know that some other creators like vidIQ, for example, like they have done like a whole different Spanish channel, a whole different like Russian channel just to help with like their globalization, their reach. So it's just interesting to see how that works. How has adding in more languages helped you guys with your income?
I can't see it just yet, but I know that if you make it easier for people to consume your content, more people will show up. So this is why you have usually a multi-platform strategy, and you want to have your video available and accessible for lots of people. And that's doing foreign language dubbing, doing captions translated into their language so that it helps them to consume the content. It's not going to hurt it.
At what point do you think it's necessary for creators to do that?
I think once you start to get traction, figure out your voice in your community, you should be investing in this ASAP.
Why is that?
Well, because if you say, I can only reach a certain audience because they're English speaking, now you include more and more of the world. So we prioritize languages that we thought the world is made up of people who speak one of these 5 languages. It's going to be English, Spanish, Mandarin, maybe it's French, and I don't know what the 5th language might be. I know what it is. It's you might include Arabic. You look at dense populations of the world where they consume content, and then you make content in their language, and you can just reach more people. We would do one in Hindi, French, Spanish, because one of my guys is Brazilian. He's like, well, Portuguese is important. I'm like, okay, bro, if you say so. Yeah.
Brazil's a very big creator country, that is for sure.
Yeah.
So back to our pie chart, your next biggest one that you guys do is you have your courses and digital products.
Yes.
What are your flagship products, like your top 3 that you guys are currently selling the most?
I think a consistent perennial bestseller is The Perfect Proposal.
Mm-hmm.
That is a PDF booklet that describes what you should do along with some templates so that when you get an RFP, you can send your proposal and it'll look the right way. It will have the right components to it, and it'll give you a better shot of getting a job. It's probably one of the most transformative products we have because people literally will use it and make money on it, and they'll tell us.
I could imagine the ROI you could probably show that would be pretty astronomical.
Yeah.
What is your advice to creators so that they can figure out what the right digital product is for them?
Well, I don't think everybody needs to author a product, and there's lots of ways for you to make money. But if you're interested in teaching somebody or to create a tool, that's a pretty good place to start. Think about your consumer and what pain points they experience on a daily basis. How many times do they experience that? And if you can just make that go away, it's worth money to them. The example would be, I buy things from marketplaces like templates or assets that I can reuse over and over again. Sometimes the asset is very simple to draw, but let's say I sit there and I think I probably spent an hour to make this. Well, if they sell it for $15, my time is worth way more than $15. So I would just pay the $15 so I don't need to make that thing. And so if people understand there's a pain point that your consumer feels, you make that go away, and some portion of the value of the time that you bought back from them, they will pay you instead to do it.
Yeah, it's always tricky to figure out what people will or won't buy. What's nice about digital products, though, is that they have a lower barrier to entry. So it makes it a little bit easier to kind of like make adjustments and figure out what the right way to help them and also to sell it would actually work. When we look at the rest of your income streams, they're even across the board. We have 5% that come from speaking. We have 5% that comes from affiliates, 5 from sponsors, and 5 from AdSense. I'm curious, how does a creator in the education space like yourself, how do you find the right sponsorship partners?
Well, most of the time it needs to be something that we already use, love, or have been meaning to use, because I don't want to shill a product that I don't know if it's any good or not. And so we look for brand partners who see the value of our audience and how we show up and get excited about reaching to our community versus, hey, I have a hair product. I'm like, okay. Or I have this little widget that's on your desk. I'm like, not interested. I have a blockchain product. Nope, not interested. So we want to have that natural connection, because I don't want to burn the goodwill of our audience in that, oh, you recommend 4 things that I hate. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. They're terrible products. We should have never done that deal.
Yeah, it's hard to find the ones that are going to be good. I like your rule of thumb about they should be products that we want to use or that we're good or that we've already vetted itself. Now, the thing that's really interesting about you, Chris, is that you've been in the YouTube space for 10 years. And we have a lot of people that are aspiring to grow their creator businesses. What advice do you have for newer education channels on what they should do to build a creator business that can be successful for them?
I would say, like, first and foremost, work on your craft, figure out who your audience is and figure out how they show up and how you can reach them. I think too many people make the mistake of trying to monetize too early. And I think that creates all kinds of problems. Even in our own history, the first batch of videos we made were to promote our product. So our channel grew very slowly. And I felt a little bit icky about it, to be honest, because I knew we're making content to drive people to buy something. And the first breakthrough that we had was when we created a video just for video's sake to teach. And that thing got in orders of magnitude more views than anything we'd done prior. So that was the first clue to me. If you show up and you give value for other people and you solve a problem and you do it in a new or novel way, eventually that video will take off. That's something you want to leave behind for others. And that's kind of an important thing. It's like the other stuff that people create, I think it's just using up terabytes of data that should just be deleted because it's not very good. It's not well produced. There's not a good intention behind it. And it's taught by people who don't know what they're doing. So delete it.
Now, one thing is, so you and I had the fortune to have like an off the record sort of like talk about lots of things with YouTube strategy and all these different things. What role do YouTube ads play in your channel growth and in your monetization growth?
We consistently do a certain amount of money. That's about $250,000 a year in AdSense. We know that given our focus is on design and not on finance stuff, that we're doing pretty good in terms of our CPM. And I'm okay just continue to make the content that we make, and we use the AdSense money just to support our team. The AdSense money is not a profit center for us. It's just play money. So sometimes we'll use that money to boost videos that we think are really good so that it reaches more people. And that's how we use that money.
So when you're boosting your content, are you boosting it to your existing audience? Or are you boosting it to the people you also want to find your content?
No, we are looking for new audience members. So we'll target other creators who have an audience that I think would be naturally aligned. And that's how they discover us. They see us on the side like, oh, you might like this video. And some people will actually click on it, and that works out for us.
I find this so interesting because I talk to a lot of creators about ads, and a lot of them are like, no, the only way to actually be a valuable YouTuber is that you have to be all organic and you have to make great content that the algorithm puts in front of them and all this kind of stuff. And it just doesn't seem right to me with how big YouTube is and how difficult it is. One of the things I dislike the most about YouTube is I can't tell YouTube who to put my content in front of. I know who my content is for. Why do they get to decide who it should go in front of? Why can't I tell them with like different demographic information the same way I can when I'm running an ad? Well, ads allow for my content to get in front of exactly who I'd like them to be, so then I can really know if that content is going to be valuable to them or not. And so the whole idea, like now in 2024, 18 years since YouTube started, that you have to rely totally on organic and the home feed and stuff just seems really limiting.
Yeah. So if you find it limiting, why not spend some money and put your money where your mouth is? That I think this audience would like this. Now, I will share with you some anecdotal evidence that supports my strategy. Okay. So a while ago, we had this video about how much to charge for a logo. And it was done in a 3-part series called the Money Talk. And part 1 was okay. Part 2 was okay. But when it came to cutting part 3, I'm like telling my editor, this is the video that will blow up. And so he goes, okay, let me get it done. We release the video and it gets a couple of thousand views. This is circa 2016, I think, or something like that. And I'm like, God, what is wrong with people? I'm literally teaching you how to make money. And there were some funny quips and moments of tension that were on camera. And it gets to like 20, 30,000 views. I'm like, okay, it's a slow grind. I get it. Oh, good. But at that point, I tell one of my team members who's managing our YouTube channel, I'm like, hey, put some money against this video. He goes, how much do you want to spend? I'm like, what? $50 a day? He's like, okay. So he boosts it to an audience outside of ours, and we both just kind of forget about it. And then I like panic one time. I'm like, hey, are we still running those ads? He goes, yeah. Well, how much money have we spent? He's like, oh my gosh, I guess $2,000. I'm like, holy cow. Okay, that's a lot. You got to turn that off right now. So what happened in that period was it started to get served to a lot of people, and it was picked up by two bloggers, Design Taxi and Creative Block. And they have pretty massive audiences. And they're like, designer tells client how much to pay for logo. Some kind of clickbaity, sensational title. And then when that happened, we saw a gigantic spike. So this video that had about 30,000 views was now getting 50, 60, 80, 90, 100, 200. And today it is our most viewed video long form. It's got over 4.1 million views. For a video that teaches something kind of boring at a price, a logo. And so I'm telling you right now, our channel growth came from us doing a couple different things, isolating down what we think is good. We will pay you to watch a video that makes you money. That's how much we believe in our content.
I'm so fascinated by this because of what you said about how it's one of your best performing videos on your YouTube channel. How many views had you paid for before it got to where it is now?
That I don't recall, because we basically paid for a month's worth of views by pushing out for $50 a day. And then somewhere along the way, it was still creeping up. It was still on its trajectory. But when it took that hockey stick kind of growth, it's because a couple of different design outlets picked it up and pushed it out into the universe, I think. And there's really no way to know.
And those design outlets found you because of the ad?
We think so, because it seems like very circumstantial evidence that it's just trucking along. It's fine. We boost it for a period much longer than I thought. And then it gets picked up by somebody. Like, how do they find it? So sometimes I tell people this, it's not always that your video sucks, that it's not taking off. It could be it's the wrong title, the wrong thumbnail, or you haven't invested enough in it to make it take off. We didn't change the video content. We couldn't. We've changed the thumbnails and we've changed the title, but it's the coincidence of us boosting something and it being seen by the right people that drove a ton of new eyeballs on it.
That's so great. And I'm guessing too, then the algorithm was able to keep putting your content in front of those people, so your other content would be supported by that new audience.
We kind of call it like building up the momentum or priming the pump. Once a pump creates water for you, turn everything off and just let it do its thing. And now it's got momentum on its side. It's got good numbers. So when somebody's scanning for videos to watch, like, well, that one has 10 times more views than this next video, we'll click on the number one video that says.
I think that's massive. What are your thoughts, again, adding like a financial reason for like my question around this is, what are your thoughts on boosting your video content that supports something that you are selling?
That one's a little bit trickier because that feels like it's an ad that you're promoting. I think the ads that work the best aren't ads at all. They're story driven. There's a learning lesson in it. And then there's a soft call to action, or the product itself is integrated into the storyline, but it isn't hitting you over the head. And that way more people will watch it. If you think about it, how many of us enjoy watching ads? Unless you work in the advertising industry, not very many of us. So to say that you're going to force me to watch something I don't want to watch, I think if anything, you're going to alienate your audience.
What do you recommend that creators do in their calls to action in their videos to help them with selling their products, services, courses, anything that they're trying to do? This is unrelated to paid ads, but more like just a general, like in your video question.
I would do something where there's a lead magnet. That's your call to action, where you give even more value. And it could be like in the video, you're talking about something, and then there's a worksheet or something that you can provide to people. Say, if you want the worksheet, go to this website, check the link in the description, and then they would go to that. Then you can collect their emails, and you can understand because they've raised their hand of expressing interest in the product. And then now you can start to talk to them and say, oh, if you enjoyed that, consider doing this course, this program, this mastermind, or something like that.
Perfect. I love it. Chris, what is your next money move?
My next money move? Our next money move is to hopefully kick some major butt with our premium memberships. We're almost at 500 members who have previously been just watching for free and who want to support us. And we need to get that to 1,000 and then 10,000 and to 100,000. And then that's a game changer for us, because even at $1 a month, if 100,000 people supported the channel, that would generate $1.2 million in revenue. There's a lot I could do with that in terms of like hiring more people, bringing on consultants, educators, so that the content continues to improve and keep up with what's going on.
I love it. It sounds so fantastic. We will have the links to everything that Chris has talked about, including where you can follow him on his socials, over at thefunnedyoutuber.com. Chris, thank you so much for your excellence and for giving us all this great information about how you built your creator business. Until next week, go make that money. Peace. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar, a parent company of Gigastar Market, an SEC-registered funding portal and member of FINRA. Learn more at gigastar.io. Neither Gigastar nor its affiliated companies provide legal, regulatory, financial, or tax advice. Any opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and are the informational purposes only. The information and opinions expressed herein are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investments, objectives, financial situation, or needs of any specific investors.